This video that we're looking at is called Origin of Language, the Truth Revealed and How It Is Proof That God Exists.
Nearly every moment of every day is undergirded by one feature we take for granted far too often: language. As you listen to this video, thoughts are formulated in your head.
Hold on, let me check that. Whoa, you're right.
Each of those actions requires language.
Wait, so for language in a video to cause thought actions in my head, that requires language? No, I'm sorry, I can't believe it.
When you make a phone call or send a text message, you can only do so via language.
I'm learning things. Thank you for telling me this. I thought this video would be a joke. I didn't expect to be learning so much, such as that poop emojis are language.
Whether in English, Spanish, Mandarin, or any other language.
So you're trying to tell me that every language counts as a language? This stuff's out there, man. This is too much for me.
Human life as we know it would not be possible without language.
Wait, are you telling me that if life as we know it were different, life as we know it would be different? It's just wild. I don't know how you believe this stuff.
But how did language come about? And why do we have so many languages?
I don't know. God did it?
Consider an evolutionary explanation for how language evolved.
Evolutionary. Okay, I have no problem talking about languages evolving, as long as we're both on the same page that we're talking outside of the biological realm. Aside from, obviously, the biological development of the cognitive ability to do things like language in the first place.
As the theory goes, over billions of years, non-matter became matter.
Well, I guess you're sticking to the letter of what I said. You are staying out of the realm of biology, just not at all in the way I meant. This is kind of like if somebody asked you, so, how'd you fix your lawnmower? And you said, well, it all started when Alexander crossed the Hellespont. Wait, I just noticed something though. Can you repeat that?
As the theory goes, over billions of years, non-matter became matter.
Over billions of years, non-matter became matter. Well, I don't want to spoil anything, but this is the level of scientific insight you can expect for the rest of the video.
And then non-living matter became living, single-celled organisms.
Yeah, you can tell the narrator didn't write the script, huh? With that big pause in the middle of that sentence. Is he even a real guy? I don't know. I can't even tell anymore. Computers have ruined the internet.
Which developed into more complex forms of life.
Oh yeah, and now we're talking about abiogenesis and biological evolution. Just like I hoped we wouldn't. But it's a creationist video, so I guess it was inevitable.
As these forms of life developed into animals and other creatures, communication became a necessity.
The way you say that, it makes it sound like you're saying communication becoming a necessity is just a thing that happens whenever you have organisms developing into animals and other creatures. One doesn't really seem to follow from the other. I mean, sure, communication can be useful for animals who already have a certain type of lifestyle, but it's not like animals and other creatures would just cease to exist if communication never developed. You'd just have animals and other creatures that don't engage in communication with each other. Also, what are these creatures other than animals that, from my understanding of what you're saying, engage in animal-like communication? What creatures are you thinking of? Archaea, bacteria, fungi, plants, slime molds? What are we thinking of here?
You're asymmetric. Your beard is not straight.
My face is constantly changing shape through the years.
Through the fucking season.
Eventually there will be a conspiracy theory that I'm never the same person.
While animals have the ability to communicate in limited, non-verbal ways, creatures of higher intelligence would need to develop more complex forms of communication.
Oh, other creatures in that sense. You got the animals and then you got the humans, and the humans are non-animal creatures. You don't mean mushrooms are talking to each other.
But merely desiring to communicate more clearly is one thing. To actually develop the ability to do so is a whole other issue.
That raises an interesting question, I guess. Do animals with limited communication but without complex human-like language have the ability to think to themselves, wow, I would really like to be able to use my verbal expression to communicate more complex thoughts to the other members of my pack? I would be very surprised. I would think that those kind of thoughts go along with the development of the brain into a brain that is capable of that kind of language, and that the use of that kind of communication would come naturally, the way it does for us, not through some kind of a conscious choice. For there to be an animal out there that's capable of coming up with the idea of complex language, but just failing to implement it through some sort of physical limitation, maybe, seems a bit fantastical to me. I don't really see how that would occur evolutionarily evolutionarily. It seems to me that change and the benefits of that change drive more change. You're not just going to get a bunch of change in a big lump for no benefit.
Evolutionists say that this process came about through increasingly complex grunts and babbles.
Well, considering that language is grunts and babbles, and that the earliest languages would have been less complex, yeah, I would think so. And that kind of goes along with what I was just saying, where the gradual increase of complexity in the language just follows from the gradual increase of complexity in the relevant areas of the brain, and it's not something where people just decide, yeah, we're going to talk to each other now. We've invented language now. We wanted a way to do it, and we figured it out.
Until a shared capability to form words arose over time. It's an explanation that's easy enough to follow. But does it hold up to scrutiny?
Hell, I don't know. That might sound worrying until you realize that I don't have to know for this video. This video is not some analysis of the different scientific ideas about the origin of language in humans. That might be what happens in a serious video, but we're not dealing with a serious video. We're dealing with Logicked response material.
Is it consistent with other evolutionary reasoning?
Yeah, definitely.
The answer is no.
No, it's yes.
In fact, there is a glaring hole in the logic of the evolutionary explanation.
Hey, I'll let you tell me what you think the logic hole is. All I'm telling you is it's not that it's inconsistent with evolution.
The process of language development we observe in history just does not fit.
Languages changing over time and diversifying as people pick up new words from each other and modify them without usually much conscious thought about it. That seems to fit perfectly fine. It sounds like basically the exact same thing we're already talking about.
To begin with, language would have evolved as part of our survival instinct.
When people say survival instinct, I normally think of like self-preservation. Run away from predators, avoid pain, stuff like that. The instinct to want to stay alive. I don't think I would put language in that category, but I agree that humans have an instinct towards communicating with language.
The better we can communicate with each other, the better we can collaborate in protecting our people, growing food, and such.
Yeah, it has a clear survival benefit, which would help to explain how it would achieve that increasing complexity over time. I'm just saying that when you use the term survival instinct, I think of something a little bit different.
From this, we can deduce the roadmap evolution would suggest for language's development. What would start out as grunts and babbles would continue to grow more and more concentrated, as this provides for better communication.
Wait, concentrated? I thought we were talking about complexity. What do you mean by concentrated?
As people groups develop their own languages, the continued development should bring their languages closer and closer together to enhance collaboration between tribes and peoples.
Sure, if they're living together and interacting all the time. If people are really thoroughly interacting and not segregating themselves, that sort of thing tends to happen pretty naturally. But of course, also people can decide to do that for the purpose of enhancing collaboration and so on. Of course.
One should assume the end goal would be a single, shared human language.
The end goal of who? All the people on the planet? What do they care? They can talk to the people who they want to talk to already. They probably don't even know the people 20 miles away, let alone the people a continent over. Not only do they not know them, they don't even know they exist. We're talking about prehistoric people, and even if they wanted to do that, how would they even do that? They don't have cars, they don't have planes, they don't have the internet. At this point, they don't even have writing. I don't understand what you're proposing should happen here.
Think of it as a linguistic edition of survival of the fittest.
A linguistic edition of survival of the fittest? Okay, language is not biology. Biological evolution analogies for language break down quite badly if you look at them too close. They're just analogies. They're just for illustration. But let's think about this. What would it mean for survival of the fittest to apply to human language? Well, biological evolution is about populations being divided from each other by some means, and independently retaining different random changes so that the populations diverge over time. And I would say this is akin to a language. So you have one tribe over here and one tribe over there. Maybe they're separated by something, by water, or maybe they just really hate each other and they never interact, whatever. And let's say they started off with the same language. Those two tribes are populations of people. Well, their languages are also populations. To keep it simple, let's say they're populations of words. But this population doesn't just consist of one instance of each word that's in the language, like a dictionary. It consists of every time the word is spoken. An individual in the population is an utterance of a word. And over time, in each of these two populations of words, the frequency and the characteristics of the words will inevitably change. Maybe a word that's really popular one generation will die out completely 3 generations later. Maybe new words will be made up by that generation and become extremely common. Maybe the pronunciation of certain sounds will be just a little bit altered in each generation. Any number of different linguistic changes. And all of these changes will be happening in response to a whole bunch of different stimuli. The changing needs of the human group to describe different things over time, changing culture and interests and tastes, connotations of certain words with different events in history or different types of personality or different age groups. All these different sorts of things provide a push for languages to change. And this is the environment. This is what the words are the fittest for at any given moment. But a word that's very, very fit one year might be very, very unfit 100 years from now and go extinct. No environment is perfectly stable over time. And as the environment changes, what it means for a word to be fit for that environment changes too. This goes for pronunciation as well, which in the long run creates new words itself. Because the way things might be said 1,000 years from now can be so radically different from the way they're said now that it's essentially just a bunch of different words. Much like how the appearance of a biological organism in 100 million years might be so radically different from its ancestors that it would be identified by the casual observer as a different thing altogether. And this is what's going to happen between those two tribes over time, as the pseudo-random changes in language stack up over time, and as the pseudo-random pressures of people's ideas about language also change over time. Because there's no exchange of any of these changes between the two groups, all that's going to happen is they'll diverge further and further and further. And it doesn't matter if they want this to happen. If they like the idea, if they don't like the idea, if they even know about the idea or not, it's meaningless. The fact is, they don't interact, so it's going to happen. Just like how the same thing applies biologically to separated groups. When there's some sort of a division, change over time stacks up. It doesn't matter what anybody thinks. This is how biological evolution would be analogously applied to language. Obviously, words are not biological things. The analogy breaks down at a certain point. Languages have the ability to change in ways that genes simply can't, and their hereditary nature is not quite so firm as with genes, and the concepts of survival and environment are not quite so clear-cut as they are with biological individuals in real environments. But for the purpose of illustration, it's reasonably good. This is why linguistic evolution is one of the things most useful to explain to someone how biological evolution works if they're confused. In many ways, it's very similar, but it's something that happens on a much shorter time scale, which a person can witness happening over the course of a lifetime. Now, having said all this, I am very confused what it is that you're trying to say. You said that something, I don't know what, would have an end goal of creating a single shared human language, and that this is what survival of the fittest is. What are you trying to say?
Just as many species and features have supposedly been left behind in the course of evolution, leaving us with the more finalized versions we have today.
Excuse me? More finalized versions? What the hell is that supposed to mean? This isn't Little Billy's school project. He's not like, okay, I want to make zebras and elephants and humans, and so I'm going to make a bunch of dinosaurs and crap to start with, just as a garbage draft version of a zebra, and then I'll work it out from there. I think I'll finalize it sometime around when zebras are stripy and humans have language. Slap a title page on it, hand it in to my teacher. There's no finalized version of life. There's just how it is right now.
So we should have seen fewer and fewer languages as we evolve toward an ultimate form of universal communication.
Okay, I'm not confused what your point is with this video anymore. At least I don't think I am. I was really confused before, and I think that's because what you were saying was so batshit crazy in the obvious interpretation that my mind simply would not accept that that was what you actually meant. Well, I guess I'd better try to summarize just for anyone else who's having that same problem. According to this video, as I understand what I've heard so far, evolution, despite being an explanation for how life diversifies, in fact is not an explanation for that. Apparently, it's an explanation for the exact opposite. Apparently, survival of the fittest does not mean fitness for survival in a particular environment, a particular time, place, circumstance. And apparently, multiple organisms can't be fit for the same environment, as shown by the fact that they each thrive within it. No, apparently, there's one ultimate environment, just the world, and what we expect to see is that the fittest of all organisms universally will eventually win out over all the other organisms, all of which go extinct. In the end, there will only be one ultimate life form, the fittest. Apparently, this is what evolution does. It has an end goal basically equivalent to the movie Highlander.
There can be only one.
Apparently, organisms nowadays, like zebras, elephants, humans, are more fit for this one-world, permanent, unchanging environment than the organisms in the past. And thus, they're more finalized. And the number of species, I assume, is drastically lower, because this is a process of narrowing the field and eventually reaching just one. I don't know how many species there were supposed to have been in the past, but I guess it must have been a lot larger. And so this non-diversifying, only consolidating, universal environment type evolution, this complete and total fucking nonsense, in other words, just doesn't fit with the evolution of languages, because look how many languages we have. We should have evolved to have only one, or at least far fewer over time. I mean, we should be tending towards the single, perfect, unchanging, ideal language for human society, and we should expect that we would have only this one fittest language because that's evolution's goal. That's what it wants. And evolution gets what it wants. It's omniscient and omnipotent and omnibenevolent, and it loves you, and it died on the cross for you. Wait.
Even if regional dialects and accents continue to exist, it only makes sense that man's development should not have reached a place of thousands of diverse languages that limit our ability to work together for survival and, in fact, alienate us from one another.
Right, because evolution wouldn't want it that way. Evolution would come down with some stone tablets and say, hey, humans, stop diversifying your languages. You're supposed to want to be working together globally all the time throughout all of human history where you had no idea each other even existed. Yeah, you can have accents and dialects like that guy said, but don't let it get out of hand. Look, commandment number 2, thou shalt not make unto thee any new language. How much more clear could I be? I want language evolved to its fittest form right now.
What we see in reality is that many languages have grown in the opposite direction, becoming more diverse and splintered the longer time goes on.
Wait a minute, are you saying languages diversified as humans diversified geographically and culturally, like you showed on that globe? No, come on, no, that can't happen. That's ridiculous. Human history should consist of humans psychically connecting with each other all around the planet and negotiating a truce over which language we're going to use. The great evolutionismus has declared that this is the end goal. How could we go so wrongly against his divine will?
Consider, for example, how many subsequent languages Latin has spawned.
Let me, wait, 1, 2, wow, yeah, there's like some. I never thought about that before.
Evolutionarily, Latin should have been a stepping stone on the path toward unification and increased communication.
Weirdly, it kind of was. It was used as a way for people with a lot of different backgrounds to communicate with each other for a very long time. And there's quite a lot of mutual intelligibility between, for example, Spanish and Italian, or even English and Spanish and Italian. A lot of the words are pretty much the same. A lot of the fancier English words are just Latin words. But this is a historical thing, not an evolutionary one. I don't know that I've ever seen someone get the concept of evolution this ass backwards in my life.
Instead, it has become a stepping stone on a totally different path, resulting in a separation of numerous linguistic families.
You're blaming Latin for the separation of Indo-Iranian languages from European languages? You're blaming Latin for the separation of Romance and Germanic languages? Or are you just talking about the separation of Spanish and Portuguese and Italian and French and so on? That's still, of course, a massive unification. That's a huge swath of the European continent sharing at least similar languages, which before the Roman Empire would have been significantly more fragmented. But again, that's just a historical fact. That's nothing to do with evolution. We don't expect languages to be unifying with each other over time, certainly not on a biological basis, but not even on a linguistic basis. We expect languages to be diversifying, which is why despite the conquering of the Roman Empire and the imposition of Latin, Latin is no longer spoken and these other languages that branched from it are. Because linguistic evolution, just like biological evolution, is a process of isolation and diversification. I have no idea where you got this idea that evolution is about reaching some ultimate final form, some one final species, some one final language, some ultimate the fittest for all time and all space. That's the exact opposite of what evolution tries to explain. If that was what we observed happening, evolution is not the explanation we would come up with for it. I don't know what the explanation would be, but it sure wouldn't be that.
Any attempt to help language language evolve into a universal system of communication has failed miserably.
Yeah, because it's impossible to stem the tide of the constant evolution of language. When language is used naturally, it changes naturally as well. The only way to make it stop changing would be to freeze it in time and stick it in a museum somehow. And more importantly, politically, it's hard to impose a universal language on people. People will say, no, fuck you. And rightly so.
Despite a supposed evolutionary impulse to enhance our ability to communicate, one-world languages like Esperanto have gained almost zero traction, as people groups around the world have spurned such developments.
Hold on. Yeah, we have an instinct to communicate with each other, yes. We're social beings. We benefit greatly, directly, immediately from being able to communicate with other individuals in our groups. This has a clear survival benefit to the individuals within that group. But that doesn't imply we have some impulse to globalize a single language and eradicate all the others. There's no reason to think that humans would have been striving for such a thing through all of human history if evolution is true. How exactly do you think that evolution would accomplish even putting an impulse like that into a species? Like on a biological instinct level? I want to know exactly what the mechanism is that you're proposing here, because I don't see how such a thing would actually function. I mean, on a cultural level, it's already difficult enough. When we can say, okay, we have this vast area with all these different people with different languages, but who are connected well enough by technology and stuff that it makes sense for them to try to share a language and communicate with each other. When we can talk to each other and try to negotiate this and work out deals and, implement government-controlled schools to dictate that this new language has to be taught to the children, it's already difficult and damn near impossible enough in that circumstance. There has been some progress at consolidating languages, reducing the number of them. A lot of very niche languages are kind of dying out. All kinds of different empires contributed to this, as well as just the increasing size of countries and the increasing reach of technology and the increasing implementation of educational programs. Whether all this is desirable or not is up to individual people to decide for themselves. I'm just saying that's the fact. Global language loss is a real phenomenon. A lot of languages have already gone extinct, and many more are considered to be endangered. But nothing really says this is the product of some biological impulse. It's more the product of us having such a broad reach that we continually bump into each other, and so we have to deal with it. If we lose that constant connection around the world, that won't continue. Yes, the spread of certain languages globally will leave its mark, but the continual fragmenting and splintering of those languages into different dialects and eventually other languages will be far more pronounced if there's no technological ability to link people over such big distances. This doesn't just go one way. It's not like we're narrowing down the field of languages and that will just inevitably continue forever. What we see now is the product of a particular period in history and a particular state of the world. We live in a time period where increasingly the human population seems like a single global group, in the sense that our physical selves and our information are able to travel so rapidly anywhere. No one's truly cut off from anyone anymore. But despite all this, the basic processes underlying linguistic evolution continue. Pronunciations change, words are added and removed, grammar is haphazardly applied, and new grammatical systems emerge. Just look at all the different versions of English around the world. Some of them you could say it's questionable if they even are English anymore. Yeah, there are some nerdy organizations out there that try to narrow language to a formal version. Schools try to do it to some extent too, and I suppose in some places these things mitigate the effects a bit. But the general public, just talking to each other in their day-to-day life, don't seem to have some serious interest in maintaining the global unity of language. They seem much more interested in talking to each other in ways that work well enough and that they find culturally relevant, maybe even culturally distinguishing. There can be pride in the separation of their dialect or accent or pronunciation or slang or whatever from others. This can be integral to how non-global groups of people perceive themselves. And this, to me, seems much more in line with something that we would call the biological propensity of humans, as it relates to how we tend to use language. I can talk to who I need to talk to, it works. My mom understands me, my brother understands me, my friends understand me. We have our little inside linguistic jokes. We have our little bits of idiom and slang and grammatical error that identifies us as part of the in-group. It does the job, and that's that. Natural selection just works by, it's good enough, you stayed alive. You made a baby. The global scale means nothing. For all people generally to deeply care and commit themselves in their everyday life to increasing the conformity of language over the maximum amount of geographical area, for this to be some instinctive need, you would have to have some selection pressure applying to individuals, not groups or species or anything, but individuals, such a powerful survival-based need, not just to be able to talk to other people you know, but to anyone on the planet, that it overrides all other potentially competing concerns. Explain to me how that's supposed to work. I want you to tell me exactly what the survival benefit is of some person in prehistoric times caring deeply about the ability to speak with someone halfway around the planet. What selection pressure was there for that?
So why do we have all of these languages?
Linguistic evolution. You know, the rough linguistic analog to biological evolution? Evolution, that thing where in both cases the entire point is that it causes diversity.
Why is it that we see a consistent fracturing of languages throughout history?
Because it's uncontrolled change over time, not something dictated by some god with an end goal.
The big question is, if humans evolved language in order to communicate with each other, then why did language continue to evolve in a way that interfered with such communication?
It seems to be working just fine right now. Yeah, evolution doesn't work by some hyper-group selection where the ideal global group is selected. It would be for the good of the species. Yeah, evolution doesn't work through the good of the species. It doesn't even work at the level of the group, really. It works at the level of the individual and the gene. And yeah, which individuals prevail affects the population, but the selection is on the individuals. And we have plenty of individuals who seem well enough adapted to survive. Where exactly is the evolutionary pressure for what? A personality type that's inclined towards and submissive to global linguistic planning initiatives, specifically for the good of the species? Where do you get these ideas? This is evolutionarily absurd. Oh, creationist YouTube channel, right.
The evolutionary explanation for language's development does not fit with what we observe.
Yes, it fits exactly what we observe languages doing today and in history.
But the Bible's does.
Oh, of course.
The evolutionary map of language development would suggest a move from caveman grunts, continuing on toward greater and greater unity all the time.
So this has got to be in the running for one of the most ignorant takes about evolution ever on this channel, doesn't it? It's possible there's been something worse, but I can't think of it.
The biblical map, on the other hand, suggests a movement away from unity into greater and greater diversity.
Yeah, I know, because the people who didn't know anything thousands of years ago went, why does everybody speak different? I don't know, maybe people tried to cooperate with each other and God got scared because they were so awesome at it, and like they almost invaded his house, and so he decided he'd better make it so they can't work together as easily so they never do it again. That sounds plausible. Let's go with that.
Starting with the biblical account in the book of Genesis, where two humans were created alongside one another, one can assume there was only one language in the biblical beginning.
Wow, it's like the utopia at the end of the evolutionary rainbow.
However, in Genesis 11, we have the account of Babel. As man disobeyed God's command to fill the earth and worked together to build a greater tower in the city of Babel, or Babylon, God thwarted their work by confusing their languages.
Yeah, and it's so shocking, isn't it, that a story about why there are multiple languages would end up with people having multiple languages. How were they so accurate?
This created an emergence of people groups, as the people of like language flocked together and went to establish their own lands. In essence, this would have been a restart in which, instead of the one universal language of Adam and Eve, man would have had potentially dozens of new languages all at once. From this it follows that as mankind spread out and multiplied in their new lands, more division would continue to happen. This would create subgroups, and such subgroups would naturally begin to develop their own dialects and even spin-off languages.
This perfectly explains why we have a number of languages that are closely related to another, yet, over time, have grown apart.
So Babel explains why languages continue to evolve, because, yeah, there were a lot of languages created, and therefore more languages would evolve all the time, forever. Because he never actually says why at any point during that. He just says it would naturally follow that that would happen. Considering that apparently the language of Adam and Eve never changed all the way up until this point, it seems like languages are fairly stable, apparently, right up until Babel, where all of a sudden tons of language evolution kicks in. Just 'cause.
For example, Japanese and Chinese are very similar languages. Evolution would suggest that the two will eventually grow into one new language, as man evolves up the linguistic chain.
As man evolves up the linguistic chain. What the hell? Okay, so apparently evolution is just a series of links in a straight line. We start at the first link, then we go to the better link, and then the better link, and then the better link. Apparently all those analogies to webs and trees didn't penetrate somehow, despite him just showing one. You know, those drawings where stuff keeps spreading out and getting more different over time, which is the entire fucking point.
But the Bible suggests the opposite. The longer they go on, the more distinct the two will become as they add new words and become claimed by more people in each group.
Become claimed by more people. Whatever. Okay, tell me how the Tower of Babel story predicts that languages will evolve over time. Quote it. Don't just infer from the story. Don't read into it. Tell me where it says it.
In other words, the explanation offered by the Bible fits exactly what we see happening in the real world.
The explanation offered by the Bible is that God got mad at people for challenging his power and scrambled their speech in a single sudden event. This is not what we see happening in the world. I don't care that you're reading into the story that this would cause linguistic evolution to start. That's you making up a different story. That's not what the story says.
Evolution's explanation, on the other hand, does not align with observable linguistic science.
Have you ever read a linguistics book? They're all about languages changing and evolving over time. So considering that linguistic science is all about linguistic evolution, yes, I would say linguistic evolution lines up fairly well with it. Absolutely insane. Look, I don't expect creationists to have anything like a firm grasp on what evolution is, be that biological, linguistic, or otherwise, but it's usually a lot firmer than this. That one was fun. Painful, headache-inducing, kind of depressing, but also unique and original and entertaining and just refreshing. Like a nice cold slice of blueberry pie with ice cream after a big steak dinner. Well, thanks for watching, I guess. If you would be so kind, before you go, please do give the video a like and click subscribe if you haven't. And if you really like the channel, maybe consider supporting. A couple of bucks per video or per month helps a huge amount, and enormous thanks to all of my supporters who've already made that choice. For early access, email list, list.logicked.com, and I'll see you next time.